All right, we're learning the first mimer of Parshas Miketz, and hey Ahuva, we're learning the first mimer of Parshas Miketz um, of the PDF is page 3. Okay, so I think Reb Shimon and Sharna will come on in a bit. It says Vahi Miketz Shnosayim Yamim Parachaylim. After 2 years, a completion of 2 years, and Pari is in a state of dream. So the Alter Rebbe says like this: the Hine Parsha Zu, this Parsha, starting Parshas Miketz, Mechuberes LeParsha Shlefanel, is connected to the previous Parsha, meaning the previous Parsha finishes off, Parshas Vayeshev finishes off after Yosef translates, Reb Shimon, which is starting, after Yosef translates and interprets the dream of the two Sa'arim, the two ministers of Parai, the baker and the wine pourer. So he asked the wine pourer to remember him and maybe help him get out of prison. So the Torah finishes off in Vayeshev, V'leizachar Saramashkin is Yosef. He doesn't remember Yosef, as Yosef asked him. And because he doesn't remember, had he remembered, possibly he would have gotten out earlier. Because he doesn't remember and mention him to Paro, so therefore there becomes an additional 2 years. So Bira Inyan, to understand all this, just like we have obviously Pari, the way he manifests down in this world, and the Sarmashkin, the way he is in this world, a selfish, ungrateful person, in the world of Klipa, of negativity, so too, there's the characteristics within Heishan, which is starting with within the avoda of Hashem in the Saramashkin, the wine pourer, and Parai in heaven. Shekmoy came the Sitra Kedusha, the side of holiness. Yeshgam came There's these characteristics, but they're in positive. So here it comes out in negative. In this world, it's negative. Parai is negative eventually, and the Saramashkin is negative. So he explains what this is. We know that a person is made up of the 4 components of Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Afer: fire, wind, water, and earth. Yisoid Eish, Mishkone Belev. So in Avoda, the passion, which is fire, its place is in the heart. Mokar HaLechois, and water, moisture, Lechois means moisture, comes from the Moyach, comes from the brain. Sheshamhu Mishkan Yisoid Hamayim. That's where the Yimayim means, even though there's components of it in all parts of the body, but its central place of fire is in the heart, and the central place of water is in the brain. Vahareya, the lungs, She'eves Kol Minimashke, draws the liquid, the water in this case, V'lechis, and moisture. Mehamoyach, from the brain, Aidei Hakana, through the windpipe, lekaras chaim halev, to fan, so to say, and cool the passion of the heart. It means the passion of the heart gets excited, very excited, and you need the logic of the brain, which is represented in the mayim, to calm it down. So what does this mean in our Vaida, in our service of God? Kach b'nefesh halikis, so too it is within the godly soul. The Yisoid Hamayim, what is water? B'moyach, which is in the brain. He bechinas chachma v'das v'avodas Hashem. That represents a person's wisdom and understanding of das, and also connection in our service of God. V'moyach machshavte, in the person's brain and thinking, mean the logic. You use the power of your brain to connect to Hashem as much as possible. Meaning, what does it mean as much as possible? There's no thought that could grasp God. So it's not that you have a brain and in the intellectual side, the logical side of your person, you could grasp God, because you can't grasp God. It says less machshavet fisabei. No thought to grasp God. Nevertheless, even though you can't grasp Hashem fully, but nevertheless, the verse says, Shlomo Melech, King Solomon says, that noida b'sha'arim baila, that how could you have any kind of knowledge of God? Noida means to know. So there's 2 explanations of the statement. We say this, and this is part of the Eishes Chayil that we say Friday night for Mishlei, right? So noida b'sha'arim baila means two explanations. One is that your noida, your baal, it's talking about the woman, right? So noida b'sha'arim baila, her husband is known at the gates, which is kind of a sign of respect, a place where people hang out. The important people hang out at the gates. We know that already. Ephron was at the gate, right? So people that hang out at the gate, the important people of a city, your husband is a known person there. That's one way to explain the statement Noida b'sha'arim baila. But in Chassidus, it also explains that Noida b'sha'arim baila, your husband is known to you by sha'arim through evaluation. The word sha'ar, the sha'er, to evaluate each person according to their level. So it means if you can't 100% grasp God, but within your mind, you could grasp to your limitations. Therefore, it says, Kol chad lefum she'ira delay. Each person, according to their ability to grasp, to understand, to comprehend, each person according to their level. So, you don't grasp the whole of Hashem, but you use your intellectual tools, your mind and your brain, to understand to the limit of yourself, each person's limit, how much they can understand within Hashem. And what does it mean? What are the methods? Right? Not just because you have a brain, but you have to use the brain. What is the methods? Hisbaininus, contemplation. And what are you contemplating about? Recognizing God's expansion, Hispashis means the way God expands in the greatness of God from the highest to the lowest levels. It means you see how great God could be and how mundane he could come down. So seeing the great range of God's power is through his bindiness, and not just saying, okay, God's great, but really that's how the tefillah of davening describes the greatness of Hashem's hispashtus. So therefore, that his bindiness should give birth to the sha'arim naida b'sha'arim ba'al, that you should have das, have connection to Hashem. You realize there's nothing else but Hashem. Top of the left-hand column on page 3. Ki beruach piv kol tzavam. And part of the contemplation is a person recognizes that with the breath of Hashem's mouth, meaning with the Dvar Hashem, all the tzvav, all the cosmos, all creation came into being. V'kula kamei, nevertheless, even though the greatness that we could see of God's creation, but all that kamei by Hashem kuloi means everything the broadness that you realize God's abilities. And that's all just the way God expresses himself as a creator. But kamei, the way God is, by the way everything's to himself, klei chashiv doesn't even matter. Means you see, part of the hisbaininess is that what should inspire the person through their mind to connect to Hashem is the greatness of God's bria sa'ilum of creation of the world, and how nevertheless that means nothing to him. Kamei to Hashem klei chashiv, as if it's nothing. And all this is supposed to inspire connection to Hashem, and eventually through that to avos Hashem, to love of Hashem. For instance, diburi shel adam, a person says something, right? You say an utterance, you say a line. You're not going to say the person is defined by the one utterance that he or she says. That's just one utterance. I mean, this doesn't describe it. It means if you have a person who never talks and says one utterance, so you could say we know a little bit who that person is from that utterance, but to say that defines the person. Well, a speech of man, you can't. It's like nothing compared to who the person is. And therefore he says that's why it's noida b'sha'arim baila. That's why when it says to each person, the fum she'ira delay, each person according to their level. I mean, each person both gets impressed by different things, and each person's ability to understand that, to grasp both God's great handiwork, and to apply it to realize that that's nothing compared to the essence of God. That everyone has their levels of their hisbaininus of Hashem. Each person according to their level could connect. Because again, das of the three powers of the brain is the connection part, right? Chachma is the inspiration, Bina is the understanding, das is to connect to this idea that it should yield emotional outcome, which is the avos Hashem and yiras Hashem, love and fear of God. Is each person yerchel das lahasik could understand ki ein oid, there's no more that whatever you see is only coming from the utterance, and just like an utterance means nothing to the essence, so too of a person, so too the creations of Hashem, which is massive, and the details of it, of all of it, and how it's all nullified to Hashem, all that is nothing compared to the essence of God. There's nothing outside of Hashem. And therefore, the mamish doesn't. It's not. It's God is when we say that everything is kaloi chashivi kamei. It doesn't matter. Meaning, there's no hispilus. There's no God doesn't get affected, and there's nothing comparison to the essence of God. And again, the more you think about it, I mean, you could say it in words quickly and then be satisfied with that. But if you really think about it, the more you dwell on it, that's why his blindness is a time-consuming exercise. It's not just the words that you're saying, like the Alter Rebbe put it in a single paragraph, that all creation comes from the utterance of Hashem, and the greatness of God's ability, range of creation, and nevertheless, to the essence of God, that means nothing. You could say that in a single sentence. But to be misbein and contemplate it, that it should really understand that each person, according to their max abilities of comprehension, after a while, it really sinks in. So that's all the moyach. That's all from the mind. What's Yisoida, which is Mamayim, we said, that's the water of the four elements. What's Yisoida Eish? What's Simoyin, that's the thirst. Shebelev, the heart, Hamavin, that now understands, Bihispoinus Bigdulos Yisparach, of this contemplation. I mean, there's the contemplation in the mind is raw information, but its effect emotionally, that it has a thirst, that it affects a thirst within the person. That's how it comes down to the heart. When the contemplation of the greatness of God, and really nothing, that also part of the effect that a person gets simayon towards godliness is when you realize that as great as creation is, nothing to do with the essence of God. So you want to be connected to something that's greater than the greatness of creation, right? You want to be connected. Why a person wants to be connected to the highest of levels of their ability. So therefore, it also gives a thirst based on the information that nothing matters to Hashem, that there's no level. And the outcome of that is kolsa nafshay. There's a want of the soul, a yearning of the soul. Elav yisbarach to Hashem ba'ava azah, with a tremendous love, kirish b'yesh, like a burning fire. Shall heves, and it becomes a flame that goes up on its own. That what is the desire of this flame is the hiskalal ba'or Hashem, to be included in the light of God, v'yichud of yisbarach, and the oneness of God. You want to go out of your separation from Hashem. And at that point, you have no other desire, Elias Lamata, to be here. Keteva or Eish, like the nature of fire, that goes naturally from below up. So that's the response of the fire. He goes back, but what is the effect on in the intellect, the level of the moach, is milmai lamata, from above down. It means the mind understands. And the more the mind is misbein and contemplates, is not just to understand what happened in creation or the greatness of God, but also to understand the why. Why did God create? Right? This is the cycle of Ratziv Shuv, of yearning and returning, because at the end the mind says, okay, so I get, so there's everything's so great and God is beyond all this. But why? Why did he do all this? What's the purpose of it? And when the mind can connect to the purpose of it, what does Hashem want from me? Therefore, he wants me to do something here. The leiv is the heart responds to it. It's information that just stops there. Just with the information alone, the heart responds and wants to go to Hashem. But the mind goes back and says, but that's not the purpose. The purpose wasn't to inspire me that I should not want to be here, obviously, because he created the world. So therefore, we have to, what does he want? He wants us to be here and do Torah mitzvahs. Therefore, the moyach is milmai lamata. Means after it goes through the cycle, it starts off, it triggers the hisbonenus, and then it has the avas Hashem, then comes back the moyach to say, okay, so what's the reason of it? So it continues in a cycle. It's from above down. It takes, what's the makam gavoya? Water starts from a high point and goes down. The high point is the realization of creation, the greatness of creation. The low point is therefore what? What does Hashem want from me? And therefore he wants me to come down to this world and to be effective here. To bring down or Hashem zu Torah mitzvahs. What does Hashem want from a yid? he or she is to study Torah and to do mitzvahs. Lahoyer al nafshay gam mata, not to lose yourself, but to light with the Torah mitzvahs as you are here down in this world. That yes, you have this burning desire to Hashem, but is that what Hashem wants? And therefore, ba'akarchach, it's by force you're alive. Why is it by force? Because your heart doesn't want to be here. The information from your mind to your heart inspires the kiloyin, the kloisa nefesh, the leaving of the soul from the body, the fire that wants to leave and go back to its source. But the mind comes back in and says, "Shuv." Well, I mean, that's not that. But that wasn't the purpose of creation. The purpose is Torah mitzvahs and to light up the soul and Torah mitzvahs here. But just like naturally, see you have a be well, Judith. Just like water puts out fire, so too, so too you feel the thirst. Means the thirst is Hashem wants, the soul wants to connect to Hashem. But afterwards, is the prophet Yeshaya says, if you're thirsty, you have a thirst for God, don't leave, go to the water, as is explained in other places. There has to be a combination of logic that overrides the passion of the heart. And where's that connection? What connects that there should be this healthy cycle of inspiration of the heart, and then the focus of the heart that shouldn't lose itself? That's the windpipe. Wakana. And there is the words of Torah, that the words of Torah is vidibartabam. That's why we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, is the understanding the his boinus that there's one. Therefore, you feel v'hafte es Hashem Elokecha, I love God. But therefore, so if I love God, what then? It reaches mamish to my might, my whole existence. Is then vidibartabam. You have to speak Torah. And the speaking of Torah is the kana that comes through the throat, the voice. That's where the words of the Torah is. That this is the path of Chachma and Bina comes through the windpipe, the person's ability to speak. And that level that connects the brain to the heart in a healthy balance and cycle, that's the job of the Sar Mashkin in Kedusha. That the lungs draw out the moisture, the shuv, the ability to understand and to use your understanding, your comprehension to affect in your behavior. That there's a purpose here, not just to lose yourself. So it brings the leichus, the moisture from the brain, to the heart. So he says, and how he describes on a holy level, this is what the Sar Mashkin sees in his dream. He has before him a vine. The eshchat zanavim, and eshchat means to slaughter, but he squeezes the grapes. Ve'eten es akos akaf par, and he puts the cup of wine in the palm of Paro's hand. What's Geffen? Pirish Geffen nikra Knesset Yisrael. Geffen is the Jewish people. The place of the multiple of the souls of the Jewish people. She clause kol neshamas Yisrael. By the Knesset Yisrael is where all that means. What's the point of Knesset Yisrael? The word Knesset, that's what the word Knesset is. The gathering place is the gathering place of all the souls. What's the idea of a gathering place? There's all types of souls in a certain gathering place. It's not the single place of certain souls. All the souls are part of Knesset Yisrael. No matter whatever the range of the souls avoda is or levels are, it's all within Knesset Yisrael. That's why he says she close kol neshamas Yisrael. But no, so what's that? That's the Knesset Yisrael. What's that novim? Hey, nitzusei neshamas is the sparks of the soul. Shekol nitzis nikra b'shem einov. Each soul, specific soul, has its own grape. Echad. Ki b'chol nitzis yesh b'chinas yayin ham'sameach alikim v'nashim. Every spark is a source of joy, both to man, meaning for the person, individual person, on their individual level of their ability to perform and to exercise and actualize the kavanah for them. What was the intention for them? So that's Mesameach Hanashim, and Mesameach Alikim, makes God happy because you fulfill your mission. Which is the ability like wine gives joy and happiness. That person could take in their love of their hidden love they have for Hashem. The Yerushalanu, this wine, this wine that's in the grape is given to us. We have a saying from our forefathers, but it's hidden, it has to be brought out. It means if a person to connect properly through love has to come out through the grape. The wine has to come out of the grape. It has to be squeezed out. It's otherwise it's just sitting in the grape. She'enevu ogel, because the grape is a total circle. And the skin of the grape is covering the juice from all sides. It means that it won't come out on its own. The and you can't take out during the page 4. You can't take out the wine. It has to be squeezed. The gas in the wine press. To get rid of the klipa, the surrounding skin. I say that covers it. Just like by the grape, you can't get the wine out without breaking the klipa and taking it away and separating it from the wine. You can't reveal the hidden. Matspuni means the hidden love. You have to go through a process of being squeezed or pressed. And what is that? That's bittul, self-nullification. So how does a person reveal? Means yayin is mesameach lev elokim v'anoshim. Yayin is the ability to love, and through the love a person acts, and therefore everyone's happy. The neshama is happy in its love for Hashem, and Hashem is happy with his love for the Jewish people. But the source of the happiness is the wine, the ava that's there, and it has to be brought out. How is it brought out? It doesn't come out. It comes out only through a hard. Both oil and grapes have the common. It's a different way, but they both have the common that in order to get the oil or the wine out, it has to be pressed. And what does that mean? Bittul, like it says, a person has to be a shval ruach, a low spirit before other people. Don't have an ego. It's not about other people belittling you. It means that you want to be something special. But because someone has a power over you one way or the other, so that person is going to make you feel little. That's not the idea of it. The idea is humble yourself. You be humble. Do it on your own. View yourself as offer, as dirt. Like a mat that people walk on. That's how you get rid of the foreskin. That the klipa of the orla that's covering the heart, they feel the love. The love is there, but it's being blocked, like the grape, the oil, the wine can't come out. Here the Rebbe says that means, what is the orla salev? What is the foreskin of the heart that's preventing a person from connecting to their yayin, to their wine, which is their ava mesuteris, the hidden love. So there, that what do we say? What does the Navi say? That the sins of a person separates a person. He says we're not even talking about a thick foreskin, which is even the Alter Rebbe says afilu mi sheloi pagam v'nitma. Even if a person wasn't blemished and didn't come impure from chatas neurim, from sins of the youth, nevertheless, mikol makom tzarchu limul ar l'sliba. Even that person has a foreskin on the heart. It's not necessarily only because you've sinned. You have to circumcise this foreskin of your heart. The hainu. What is the foreskin of the heart if you haven't sinned? It says when a person's heart is burning, and has a desire for extras. Means the fact that a person has essentials of life, everyone has essentials that you need. But why do you need extras? Maestros is extras. And the extras, when a person has a burn for extras beyond essentials of life, that he says, that's the foreskin, that is covering for the revelation of your love that you have for Hashem, that it's being concealed. And it shouldn't be concealed. So the difference the Alter Rebbe says between a person who sins and a person who wants, it's not that you want to sin, but the very fact that you want beyond essentials. And essentials doesn't have to mean a piece of bread. Essentials has to mean beyond just for comfort. That means you want it just for the sake of the thing itself. It means that you have a rutz and you have a want for something outside of God. It Means this, and again, if it's not in a way that celebrates godliness or celebrates godliness in the world or godliness within yourself, so then it's not about godliness. It's about the moistures. It's about the extras for itself. So even though you say, "What did I do? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't sin." Yeah, you didn't sin. No one's saying you did sin, but by being connected to the moistures, to the extras, is you're not totally focused on God, and therefore that conceals the Avos Hashem, because you're loving something else. You can't love two things. There shouldn't be something separating. I feel a krum dak, even if it's a very thin skin, that just has to be opened up, ripped open. So that's what it means to squeeze the grapes, to get rid of that, the foreskin, even if it's just about moistures extras. But excuse me, Vaidekain, and when you squeeze it, which is the Sar Mashkin, he breaks the grapes, right? He puts the cup in Pari's palm. That in your palm is my chukim, my mitzvahs. And he says, what does it mean? So it says also that the through my palm I'm covering the light. And how do you get rid of the palm that covers it, that it should be on top of the palm? That's through prayer. He explains why. That's so the Tzar Mashkin breaks is the bittul, breaking what you want. So what is paroi? Why does the one have to go to paroi? What is paroi in holiness? Which is l'umas contrary to paroi in negative. We have to learn from what we know about paroi in the negative. Just like paroi in this world is a difficult klipa, a difficult shell. He's the opposite of the shell that's concealing God. He's revealing God. He's like ripping open and revealing the word of God. Through the person doing bittul, which we said before, that's the windpipe. Shakol ma'or hakavana, when through the windpipe is not just the Torah, but also the tefillah. And when a person says tefillah with a voice, with a coil, it awakens the kavana. Then you start to feel the words of the tefillah. That you start actually drawing joy within your prayer. That you put the cup, and he says that through the tefillah, through awakening, a beginning of feeling, through the coil, through the kana, which is breaking the grapes and allowing for there to be a flow through the voice to awaken, and now there's no more concealing of the heart, and the heart gets awakened by the tefillah, because otherwise a lot of times we daven with coil and we don't feel anything. Why? Because we haven't broken the grapes. But when you break the grapes, now the voice is awakening a feeling in the heart. And then what happens? So that's only within limitations. When you put it in the hand of Paro, just like Paro negative is a very strong force negatively, so too in positive of Paro, he's a very strong force positively. And what does it mean? He brings more revelation. That through the wine going via Paro into Paro's cup, so then the tefillah has even a greater awakening and inspiration than had it just been on its own. It means the Sarah Mashkin makes it alive, makes it feeling, gets rid of the grapes, the skin. But now that it should be even more than that, that once it's alive, it should become the level of power in a positive way. That comes to the next step. He continues in Sif Gimel. So that's nice, right? So the Sar Mashkin breaks the grapes, allows for, now it's in the hand of Paro, which reveals great revelations, and through the kana, through the windpipe of Torah and Tefillah, you're awakening and you're becoming an alive person for Hashem. That's all in a good situation. But the Alter Rebbe continues in Gimel, this joy that's flowing because of the process of breaking the grapes, getting rid of the moistures, getting rid of the agenda you may have, getting rid of the extras, and allowing yourself to be focused on Hashem. So that's not everyone's holding that level. Only the straight of heart. And says in Tilim in chapter 97 that only those who have a straight heart is simcha, they can get the real simcha. Because he said before, we're talking about a person who didn't sin. That person needs to find focus and not be being burning towards extras. So this person is yashar, was straight their whole life. Avamisha pagam, but what if a person who did blemish? The rachav, their way, v'nitma did become impure, bechatas neurim, with sins of the youth. So that doesn't help. It's not. It means that this is a recipe for the yishrei lev, the straight of heart. But a person who has created extra obstacles or additional obstacles in their life, it's not going to be enough for them to have simcha in the davening. Because your machshava zara is your foreign thoughts, which is a spectrum of ideas that it could be, confuse you. You can't stay focused. You're not able to daven with a pure mind without having these thoughts that are coming in. Whatever the thoughts are, it could be anxieties, inappropriate. It doesn't make a difference what it is. It's foreign. Anything that's not about the tefillah is foreign. And therefore it's mevalvel. It confuses the person. And therefore when you're in bilbul, you can't have simcha. So what does a person do if you can't have a healthy simcha? So the solution is there's another kind of wine. It's the wine that makes a person in a drunk state. It seemingly means let a person drink who's oived, who's lost. Yain lemari nefesh, or wine to a bitter person. Yishtav yishkach risha, and he'll forget his poverty, his bad situation. Combined Razalik, it says about a person who's being taken to the death sentence of Bezdin. It says Gabe Harugi Bezdin, people that would get killed by the Bezdin. They would get them drunk before the death, so they shouldn't. It should be easier for them to accept what's happening because they're drunk, they're not focused. That person's mind should be kind of lost to be able to handle the death sentence. So we don't want a person to be clear mind when they go to the death sentence. That's too difficult for the person. So therefore, what does it mean to get into a spiritual drunkenness, where that's the way to override if you have sins that are blocking you from feeling the tefillah? And he explains, Kriyashma is a preparation. Not only is it a conclusion of the night before, of the day before, but it's also a preparation for the next day. When a person says the Shema before they go to sleep, what do we do? We say the four death sentence. Like in Chabad has it as well. In Nusach Hari, that we say at night before we go to sleep, that if I blemish the name of Yud of Hashem, and because of that I'm spiritually, I need to get stoned. Befrat, what does it mean to get stoned? Not that you have to get stoned. You are stoned. Your heart becomes a piece of stone. Your heart is inside you like a stone. So you realize that you are spiritually stoned. Surely you're responsible for that. You caused. What have you done to make that your heart should be like a stone? So too, when you have a burning passion, you want to do not extras, but you want to do forbidden desires. That's the burning process of the punishments. And especially, it's not that you just have a burning desire, but you know that you've actually done things that are wrong, the sins of the youth. So then that's sreifa. It's not that you're obligated for sreifa. You did sreifa. You're sorry if you burnt yourself and you gave yourself into passions. God, the Alter Rebbe says, everyone knows. I don't have to spell it out. Each person, according to whatever their situation is. Each person knows their situation. And what does it mean to have a stone in the heart? And what does it mean to have streifa, burning? So what do you do? What do you do if you're a person that's living a life of the 4 death sentence? So how could you accept? What do we do when a person has to go to Bezdin and be put to death? You drink the wine that doesn't that clouds your judgment, that you don't get focused on the negative, right? Just like a person who takes a glass of wine doesn't realize that there's a death sentence about to happen, So if you're experiencing the death sentence, the way to get out of it and to try to connect to daven properly and to learn properly, it's not to not allow your own obstacles that you've created to be to continue to be an obstacle, because you kind of get in a situation of drunkenness to get out of it. What does this mean? The Nisa Bizarre Kaddish, it says in the Holy Zohar, Zakik Shoit Kol Yame, Zakik Shoit, the ones who are Zakai, who are from the word Zchut, Shoit of truth, Kol Yame Mistak V'Nafshai Kilu Ahu Yem Mistak Me'alma. A person who wants to have a true kind of approach of life, it should view each day as if it's their final day. Like he says in footnote 17, he translates it, Tzadiki Emes, those who are true righteous, Kol Yom Mistaklim, every day they look at that day, Ilu Oisa Yom Mistaklim Oilam, as if they're going to die. So each day becomes your most focused day, because if you're going to die today, obviously you would be very focused, right? So L'chura ain't moving. Ki Zakehem Tzadikim, we're talking about the Tzadik. V'Zakek Shoit, we're talking about not just the Tzadik, but a true Tzadik. Shoit means Emes. Really high people. How can we say that what is so great about a tzaddik, a true tzaddik, is that he or she implements a fear of death? That's very shallow. It means if the only way you could be motivated is that today's your final day, that's means you're just fearful of punishment. Who the idea is, even the most righteous tzaddik, if you want to go to the Garden of Eden, we know that you have to be dipped in the Nar Dinar. Nar Dinar is a burning river. And what's the purpose of this dipping? If this dip, you have to forget this world. You can't remain, which is an interesting idea about how the soul is in the world above. In the world above, the soul can't be in the same mindset. It doesn't mean that you don't know the details. You're not in the same mindset. You're no longer a person that these are the things, that these are the pluses and minuses of life, or important things of life. You can't have those things important while you're in heaven. It doesn't work that way. So he says, to take away the memory from this world. It's impossible. You can't really take in this place in the world to come, in the Garden of Eden. Even if you just are a little bit connect the mixtus of a little bit of this world. And same thing, as you elevate, a person's soul elevates from one level of Garden of Eden to the next, whether it's on a monthly basis, if it's on a weekly basis, that the person comes to bow towards Hashem. You have to go to another level, that even the lower level of Garden Eden, the pluses and minuses of the lower level of Garden Eden, has to be forgotten to get to the higher level. It means you can't remain with what matters in when you ascend higher, because when you go higher, then those things that are the pluses and minuses, but the important things have to be forgotten. Otherwise, it holds you back. Even you have to forget what you understood in the lower worlds of Gan Eden. But if a person must know this. What does it mean to sit in the Garden of Eden? Is you take pleasure of the ray only of God. It's only a ray. And if a person wants to connect just the ray of God, excuse me, to take in the ray, you must forget about this world. So if a person wants to connect with the essence of God through davening and learning, and that's not just the ray, because when we do Torah mitzvahs in this world, we're connecting with the essence. How could we be focused on worldly things? Skip the parentheses. He says, one of the levels of the Nar Dinar, of this river that purify a person's mind, is made up of the sweat of the angels, called Chayes HaKodesh. Pirish Chayes HaKodesh, what does it mean, the holy animals? Which Chayes means passion, excitement. This comes from the love that the angels have from their joy of Hashem. And what is the sweat of their joy? Is like a sweat is something that's a discharge. That just like a discharge is something that gets to be sent away, so too there's a discharge of the excitement of the angels that comes down to this world. The person must pay attention to this. That a person realizes that how low they've come, that they're connected to the sweat, which is the discharge to separate the pure love from the loves of the world. And you become bitter from the excitements the motivations you have in this world. Because of the bitterness, that you don't want to be motivated by these things. Yitzek el Hashem, you cry out to God, in your pain of what drives you in life. As I said, top of page 5. Tzak libim elad Hashem. They call out their heart out to God. Until you kind of get out of your mind, meaning not to lose your mind, but you get out of what you've been connected to. That you were a whole day connected. It means, how does a person, what does it mean to dip in the nar dinar here? Is the river of bitterness. Bitterness is the realization when you come to go to shul, and you come to daven, you come to sit down and learn for a few minutes, to separate yourself from everything you've been involved in. It's not just you just kind of say, okay, no, I'm turning off my phone and we're going to sit down and daven. You have to go through the process of the nar dinar. You have to dip in. You have to forget. You have to realize that it's not so simple to just say, my whole day I spent 23 hours of my day being obsessed with myself, and now I want to have 5 minutes for God. Go through a process of bitterness, of realizing you've been distanced for so long. So you have to get out of the space that you've been connected to the whole day. You have to pay attention. V'yitka means from the word tokeya. You have to wedge in deeply in the bitterness of what you've been doing. That bitterness, like the nar dinar, should affect in you, that you should no longer remember those things. Not that you forget it, you forget the importance of it. And that is, it means to get drunk. And you can't just the Yisrael Lev who never gets involved just goes into davening, squeezes the grapes and reveals the inner love. But you need the wine to forget about the world. And to forget your poverty, your spiritual poverty. And there you could properly pray and say, Baruch Atah, to really mean it from the depth of your heart. Ata, God is standing in front of you now. What is a person always bitter about? A person is bitter about the past. You're bitter about all the concealment. Even if you had just basic fear of God, like you would have of a person. Like Rabbi Yochanan said to his students, I hope it was that you should fear God like you fear a human king. When you want to return to God because you were so distant, and ask that there should be some sort of revelation within you. You're asking God, you're praying to God, Baruch Ata, bring down. Baruch means to bring down from the Ata, from God. And all the prayers, is based on this, is to connect your wants to God. Not that God is the one to fulfill what you want, but to connect the wants themselves to God. When a person properly says the Shema, because a true Yid wants only to connect to Hashem. And you're very bitter of all the distance you had throughout the day. And you know you're still distant. Nothing's really changed fundamentally. It's there's stages. And at least if a person's bitter about it, the realization that your distance in itself is a level of closeness. It has to go through a process of squeezing. It doesn't just happen on its own. You have to humble yourself. You have to humble yourself to be a person, to be even affected by bitterness. When you actually pay attention to all the speech, action, and thoughts, love that you've done, that weren't about God. And be humbleized by that. That should humble you. Don't be humbled, like you said before, don't be humbled by someone else humbles you. Humble yourself for the choices you made. He says one more thing, I'm going to finish with this. A person must pay attention in these two levels of wine, whether it's a natural flow of revealing the love, or the flow is through the bitterness that the way of connecting is the realization of the bitterness, and therefore you want to connect to override the bitterness of disconnect. And that is V'humayim Razal, this is what it says, that the light is good. And what does it mean it's good? If you like the light, you need to hide it. What does it mean to hide it? I was looking for the love of my soul. I grasped it. I'm not going to be weak. I'm not going to hold it weakly. I'm going to hold it, I'm not going to let go. Until I bring the love to my mother's home, to my parents' room. What does this mean? To take the love that you have in davening, bring it into your studying of the written law. What is my parents' room? The oral law. These are the vessels. This is the cup of paro. The cup of paro is, in order to have light, you can't just experience light. The point of light is you have to put it somewhere, hide it somewhere. You have to place it somewhere. And what is that? That's the vessels of Torah mitzvahs. As it says, it's a cup that lifts up salvation. And then the wine has where to go. It stays. It remains. If you don't have proper vessels, so you have a moment of bitterness, a moment of excitement, a moment of connection, but there's no kois, there's no receptacle to hold it in. So then you're finished. That's it. You had a moment. Whether the moment was real or not, who knows? And also, don't be about self-fulfillment. It's not all about that you should have a good godly experience. Your focus should be to give God pleasure. You should become a person where God could rest. God rests amongst each person. You should be a resting place for Hashem, that He should find resting place within you. And how do you do it? Through placing the light within the vessels of the Torah mitzvahs. And therefore He says, Yosef. This is all Yosef. Yosef is the one who ties it all together. Pirush Yosef, tainik v'nachsruch l'fanav. Yosef means to add. He adds pleasure to God. This is what the verse says. That by the wine pourer not remembering Yosef, it becomes an end. It ends. It goes. It doesn't remain. Because the Sarmashkin went through the tefillah, went through the davening, but didn't add anything. It wasn't about adding. It was only about your own experience. You didn't put the wine into a cup. It wasn't about adding pleasure to God. It was about only having a personal experience. Then it's over. It lives for a certain point of time. We finished the 2 years. The 2 years finishes because you didn't have Yosef. Because he didn't remember Yosef. He didn't remember. He wasn't motivated about adding to God. He was motivated about having their own personal experience. God forbid it'll be finished. What's 2 years? 2 years represents Torah. Like it says about Torah, that should be shashrum yom yom, should be like a pleasure for 2 days. 2 days means the concept of Alpaim Shana, the 2,000 years the Torah comes before the world. That you have the Chachma of Torah is not a Chachma that we understand. It's not an understanding that we understand, which is Chachma is the Torah Sheb'Ksav, Bina is the Torah Sheb'Peh. Why? Because your whole spiritual experience was B'Shvil Atmi, was about yourself. It wasn't about Yosef. It wasn't about adding pleasure to God, to adding pleasure to the purpose of creation. You never thought, it wasn't important to you to place the light in the vessel. V'dailai was enough. That you had a good experience in praying. But if it's only about praying for yourself, and it's not about what you've added within the purpose of creation, there's an end to that. It doesn't last. But what happens after that? It says Pari has a dream. That's what he says. I said before that if it's only about you, you say, okay, so what? So I didn't add to God's pleasure. I wasn't. I did have a spiritual experience, but I went through the motions. I was bitter. I was upset. Now I felt connected. He says it's not a real. The whole experience wasn't real. It wasn't amitim. It wasn't true. You realize that the whole thing was a dream. Was fake. Because you caused that the light shouldn't remain. Therefore, where did it go to? It went to the 7 cows. You wanted to feed your own emotional experience. You wanted to feed 7 fat cows. What happens to 7 fat cows? They get swallowed up by 7 skinny cows because there's no bottom line. The bottom line is all about you. When the bottom line is about you, so yeah, you created 7 fat cows, and then the dream continues, and then comes 7 skinny cows. It means that your agenda moves on to other things, and they eat up the 7 fat cows, and there's no existence. You don't even know that there were 7 fat cows. Comes another 7 cows. Your next agenda. But they eat the 7 fat cows you're experiencing tefillah. We don't even know that they ate them. You wouldn't even see a sign that there once was a moment of spirituality in your life. The light leaves to such an extent as if you never prayed in the first place. But when you implement Yosef in your agenda, it's no longer your agenda. It's about Yosef. It's about adding pleasure to God, adding to the purpose of creation. It's about adding to Hashem, Yisparech. In the shift that you should become a resting place for God, not that you should have a good moment. At least God should have a resting place in this world. It's not about the 7 cows at all. It's not about your own personal experience. It's not about creating 7 cows, and therefore there's no 7 cows to be eaten up, the other 7 cows. There's no good cows, there's no skinny cows. It's not about bringing bad down to this world. It's only about hiding the tov, the good. It shouldn't be about a negative experience. It should only be about positive. All right. So it's a famous mimer, Torah Or Miketz. The idea of, at the end of the day, is how do you know? How do you know if your life is motivated by creating cows, by creating emotions, even if they're nice fat cows and they look holy and they look everything, is what happens afterwards. If they're gone, as if they never existed, then that was a personal experience. It's not about Yosef. Life has to be about Yosef adding. When it's about the Yosef adding, it's not even about the 7 cows. You don't even recognize the 7 cows because it was never about it. All right, everyone. Laila Tov, Shavua Tov. Take care.